This podcast is a collaboration between Costard and Touchstone Productions and the Dads from the Crypt podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the How Not to Make a Movie podcast. I'm Alan Katz.
And I'm Gil Adler.
And we are thrilled that you could join us. You know, today we're going to, we always talk about storytelling, but we're talking today about storytellers. We have an interview coming up with a guy named Steve de Souza, who we'll introduce shortly. But the reason that storytellers came to mind after we interviewed Stephen was the fact that he's just of course, he's an amazing storyteller because that's what he does for a living. But when you sit and listen to the guy just talk, well, you see why he's a storyteller. It's just what he is, never mind what he does. One of the luxuries of being on a movie set, in addition, it's just a cool place to be. You're surrounded, like I said, by amazing storytellers. And while you and I usually, as the director, producers, writers, we're the writers less so. The writers sometimes have time to hang. It's when you bump into someone on a movie set who's a particularly awesome storyteller, you end up in their thrall. We both had the pleasure of working with Aubrey Morris, doing Bordello of Blood. And Aubrey, he's just one of those guys. He's got such a rich history. It was exciting to work with Aubrey for me because he was in Clockwork Orange. And that was one of, to me, the most exciting films that I saw when I was a kid. To get to work with, we worked with Malcolm, which was exciting, but also to get to work with Aubrey was great. Aubrey, in the downtime while we were doing Bordello of Blood, told the most remarkable stories, having had a remarkable history. He told me one story about him and George Bernard Shaw. Now, I was a drama student. I'm at Vassar, and just after Shakespeare, there's Shaw in terms of great output in the English language. And Shaw wrote plays like Pygmalion, which My Fair Lady is based on, Arms and the Man, just Man and Superman, a tremendous output of some of the greatest plays ever written in the language. And I'm sitting at dinner one night with Aubrey, and he's telling me about how, when he was at the I think the Old Vic or the Young Vic, I forget which, and he was in a production of Shaw's Arms and the Man. And Shaw turns up in the audience one night. And Shaw is so delighted with young Aubrey, because at that point he was very young Aubrey, with young Aubrey's performance, that he came backstage and insisted on taking young Aubrey to dinner. And so Aubrey tried very hard to get into Aubrey's pants. Aubrey did not say whether the great man succeeded or not, but just what an amazing story.
Yeah. Well, we worked with some really wonderful people who had some really fantastic stories. You know, Whoopi Goldberg did a show with us, sure. And Whoopi had some wonderful stories. Frank Langella we worked with, and Frank has some stories about Broadway and off Broadway and way back when. And then I had the pleasure of directing Five-ish Finkel on Fantasy Island.
Oh, wow.
Talking about Malcolm McDowell. Right. And Five-ish told me stories about Yiddish theater going back to, he was pretty old by the time he was on that show.
Sure.
And so we had so much history, and perhaps the best was when we were making Superman Returns, James Karen, the actor, really well-known actor. He told me stories about Buster Keaton. He was a crazy Buster Keaton fan. And
that's outrageous.
Yeah, and you sit there with your mouth open in awe, going, "Get out of here! You're telling me about Buster Keaton? You knew Buster Keaton?" And so Jimmy had wonderful stories. I mean, we became very good friends after Superman, and we went out a lot, our wives together. We went away weekends together, and Jimmy was always having these stories that, you sort of look at him after a while and go, "Is this a story or is this real?" No doubt it was always, always, always real.
Oh, yeah. That certainly brings to mind that kind of, this cannot possibly be for real, but it is. Our guest today, the Steve de Souza, is one of the few writers in the $2 billion club. Well, he got there when it was much harder for features to make $2 billion. Big movies, it's easier now, but back when he got into the $2 billion club, it was a lot harder. And we met Steve, you and I, when he did an episode of Tales from the Crypt.
Yeah. And he was really delightful to work with. I mean, he wrote the episode,
right,
and he was directing it. And if I'm not mistaken, it was very early on in his career in terms of him being a director.
Yeah.
When he did Tales, might have been the first, but may not have been, but it was early on. And so, he had a lot on his plate. He wrote the episode, he was directing an episode, and we were there doing whatever we could to help him be successful in doing it.
But the thing about Steve is that he understands the medium from top to bottom. I mean, he's
probably better than most.
Yeah. I mean, because not only does he write screenplays, he writes action screenplays.
Yeah.
And really, this is the first part of our Steve de Souza Has a Story episode. There will be a second part that we'll have hopefully next episode. Once we got Steve talking, as you'll see, everything that's happened in his life is a story, and not just a story. Sometimes it's bloody epic.
And it brought him to where he is today. All of these stories that he tells about his career and how it got started and how he went from left to right to left to right.
Yeah.
All adds up to how he got to where he is today.
That's how Steve de Souza gets to be Steve de Souza.
You bet.
And with that in mind, let's bring in Steve de Souza. Thank you for so much for joining us, Steve. It's such a pleasure to reconnect after all these years. Before we get into the business side of things, you started life in Philadelphia.
That's right. I'm from Philadelphia originally. I've now spent more of my life out here than back there. I came out here in 1976 on a wing and a prayer, or actually a Freddie Laker $300 round trip ticket.
Oh God, remember Laker Airways? Wow, that'll take you back. My folks were from Philadelphia, so I feel so connected. What part of Philly were you from?
Northeast Philadelphia.
Okay.
And then my parents moved to Bucks County, and I went into Chamonix High School, which was famous for football. It's a football powerhouse. Back in the day, I was on the audiovisual squad and the school newspaper, and the usual high school background many of us have.
Sure. At what point does the Jamaican kick in?
Well, that's my dad's family. My no one expects a Spanish Inquisition, but my dad's family fled the Spanish Inquisition, went into Portugal, which seemed to be a safe place to go. And then 10 years later, it kicked in Portugal. And then they went to Amsterdam, where my earliest ancestor I can go back to was ordained as a rabbi and then sent to the New World, and was actually the first rabbi in British North America. Now, this is like baseball statistics, because the first rabbi in North America was really in New Amsterdam. That was Dutch. So I'm doing a baseball statistic when I say the first rabbi in British North America. Then I guess he, if I get it right, and then his I guess his granddaughter married the grandson of a famous pirate. The most successful pirate in history. Actually, nobody knows it, but you can look it up. The most successful pirate in history was a British privateer who was an associate of Henry Morgan in Jamaica. His name was Moses Enriquez. My middle name is Enriquez. My full name is actually Enriquez de Souza, but it's too long for the marquee. But he and Henry Morgan, they captured the Spanish fleet, the treasure fleet, on its way, I guess, back to Spain with the loot from the New World, and they captured without a shot by sort of like, I guess, I read it. It's on Wikipedia. But anyway, today it would be $1 billion, and basically saved the Dutch Republic. windfall. So anyway, they were my dad's family was in Jamaica for like 400 years, and it was only after there was a colossal earthquake around 1906. I think the same year as these things happen in waves. Sometimes, you see there's volcanoes and earthquakes, the Rim of Fire. So I think the same year there was the giant earthquake in San Francisco, was this colossal earthquake in Jamaica, which kind of nuked the economy. And that's when en masse, my dad's parents and cousins and all decamped to Philadelphia, which was apparently at that time a center of cigar making, and they were in the cigar business in Jamaica.
Wow.
So they decamped to Philadelphia, and I grew up like surrounded by all these Jamaicans, as we said. And at that time, when my dad was little, the people in the Jewish community did not know what to make of them. They thought they were gypsies. And in fact, when my dad was dating my mother, her family, they were from I guess from the Ukraine, and she said, what's his name, Enriquez de Souza? They can't be Jewish. So she made him bring a bar mitzvah picture to prove he was Jewish. But my uncles had drawn a mustache on my father's bar mitzvah picture, so his mom went to some photographer and said, you have to fix this picture. And they didn't have Photoshop in that day, so they did kind of a half-assed restoration of the picture. And my grandmother was cagey enough to say, there's something funny about this picture, bring me the original. So then he brought the original with the mustache. He said, okay, you can date him.
God, it's not a personal story, it's a sweeping saga.
Yeah, I guess so. So anyway, I grew up on Jewish holidays. My mother had two brothers, but one was in Chicago and the one was in Philadelphia. He had two daughters, whereas my dad had five brothers and several cousins in the Philadelphia area. So on Jewish holidays, it was overwhelmingly this the Jamaican thing, and the food was like Jamaican food. It was rice and peas and jerk chicken and all this stuff.
Oh,
and,
I would take that over gefilte fish
I know.
damn day.
Yeah, over gefilte fish any day.
Geez,
so and of course the accents. I learned more Yiddish working for Glenn Larson in Hollywood than I ever heard in my childhood. Because again, like my dad's family outnumbered my mom's. So the older generation all had the Jamaican accents. So I had an aunt who would, when I called, she said, Stephen, it's hot out. Where's your hat? It's cold out. Sorry, I got it wrong. It's cold out. Where's your hat? So I do a pretty good Jamaican accent. In fact, I had a cousin who they were auditioning, I guess, people for a commercial for like suntan oil or something, some product. So she went in audition. It says, you're auditioning for this thing, and she did the best Jamaican accent. She got the voiceover gig.
What ultimately took you out to this place in 76? You said
76, yeah.
What brought you out?
Well, I mean, I'm getting laid off at a local television station in Philadelphia, in the area, being unemployed. I was one of these kids, probably the first generation of filmmakers that was running around making movies in high school. I mean, it's very common now, and this was 8mm and stuff like that. So I made a movie in high school called Coldfinger. You can guess it was a parody of Goldfinger. My villain wanted to control all the ice in the world, and I think I got second place or something in a national contest, and that convinced me that I wanted to be a filmmaker. My original desire, actually, if you poked me when I was really small, I wanted to be a cartoonist, and I used to make my own comic books and my own drawings. If you have a website associated with your podcast,
we do.
Okay, I will have to send you some artwork I did. That
we insist. Yeah. I'd love to see.
I guess it was seventh grade. The teacher said, "I want you to write and illustrate a fairy tale with your own spin." So I did Goldilocks and the Three Bears, and they called my parents into a conference with the guidance counselor. He said, "Look at these drawings your son is doing here," and stuff like that. And he said, "Oh, he's just creative that way." But I basically did like a Mickey Spillane-esque version of Goldilocks and the Three Bears. And my illustrations, I had like Goldilocks comes to the detective, like Miss Wonderly. You know, she's
Yeah,
falling
yeah.
out of her blouse. I mean, I was a pretty good draftsman. But anyway, but my mother was such a neat freak that if I had to do any artwork in the house, like even in the dead of winter, I had to go outside to erase. She didn't want the erasers to fall on the floor. She was like definitely clinical OCD on this stuff. So after a while, the cleanup from any artwork was so onerous that I figured, you know what, I'll just start. You know, I'll go back. I'll go back to writing and filmmaking. There's less mess. Remember, one day she came and said, "I've got a surprise for you." And she said, "What is it?" And look what I bought for you. And I go, "What could this be?" She was that little package. It was whiteout. She said, "Now you don't have to erase anymore." Oh, thanks, Mom. I know you were thinking of me. So anyway,
Incredibly generous.
yeah. So anyway, I was in my second year at Penn State, and at that time they had kind of cobbled together a film course, but it was so nascent that there was only, they took the playwriting course, they took drama courses, and there was a TV course. There was no script writing thing. It was like a kind of hodgepodge. It wasn't really put together that much. And at the end of the second year, one of my instructors came to me and said, "You should go to Hollywood. There's nothing more you can learn here. You're ready." Now I have to back up and point out, by this time I had been a published writer. I was published for the first time. I'm going to step away for a second. I was published for the first time my senior year in high school by this magazine. This is now forgotten, but at one point, Rogue, Harlan Ellison was an editor here. They were trying to compete with Esquire and Playboy.
Harlan Ellison was the editor.
Was one of the editors here at this time. Anyhow, I wrote a funny piece for them. It was funny enough about Hollywood cliches, and they published it. So I bring it to school and I'm showing it to the other kids. And another time I got in trouble in school, in addition for my disturbing artwork for Goldilocks and the Three Bears. What are you passing around back there? And they bring you're going right to the principal's office. And I go to the principal. He says, "What would make you bring pornography to our school?" "Well, that's not pornography. The Supreme Court. Don't give me that. Why would you even think?" I said, "Well, I have an article in there." "What?" "Yeah, it's behind the centerfold." So now the principal opens it up and goes, "Son of a bitch, that's your name. What do they pay you for that?" And I said, $75. "Well, no kidding. So you want to be a writer, huh?" And the conversation, "Fine, thanks a lot, goodbye." So I was in trouble for it. Then at the end of the day, they do the school announcements and they say, the pep club will meet in room 12. The soccer field is being reseeded, so soccer practice will be on the football field. And
how old were you when this was happening?
This is, I guess 17, or about to be turned 17. I was,
when I was 7, I took my dad subscribed to Playboy magazine, and I took a copy to school, and I got into a shitload of trouble, and nothing good happened because I didn't have anything in the damn magazine.
Well, that was my get out of jail card in this case.
I wish I figured that out first.
So anyway, from that point on, I was writing, and then the next few years, I actually wrote for the New York Times, the entertainment section. I wrote for True Magazine.
And you're how old at this point?
Well, the first appearance, I guess I was 17. I was 17 when the first appearance, and then the next few years, I wrote for going through my first couple years of college, like True Magazine and a lot of the local newspapers in Philadelphia. But a big year, I made like $2,000. It was not a living, and anyway,
but still, you were doing it. You were actually, you were doing it.
I was doing it. Yeah.
Has writing always been your thing? That thing.
Well, like I said, it started out making my own comic books, but I kind of segued into the actual writing and the filmmaking as I got older. And so, as I was saying, after my second year of college, one of my instructors said, "You should go to Hollywood right now. Like, you're ready to go. There's nothing else we can teach you here." But the Army intervened. So I had to go and do my active duty for the Army.
What year is this?
This is 19. I just got contacted by, I'm trying to think. This had to be 1969.
Boy, so the draft.
I guess 1969. Yeah, I did Vietnam War. 1969. I went off on active duty, and I was a medic. And I was never overseas, and I'm thinking, well, it's not bad. I'm a medic. I'm overseas. All the other, and I worked at Valley Forge Army Hospital, which was Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, And, you know, you always think that,
Not far from home?
yeah, not far from home. And you're thinking, well, you know, we're working in a hospital and, you know, it's, we're here in the States, not too bad. So one day at lunch, somebody said, let's get some chow. And I says, yeah, I'm sick of that commissary food. We want to go to McDonald's. Nah, that's all right. And all of a sudden I hear a big crash. And as they're leaving the base, a truck plowed into a car full of my friends. And suddenly, like, I'm doing what I did not expect to be doing. I'm pulling the bodies of my friends out of a burning vehicle.
Wow.
And one of these guys died while I was trying to put an airway in his throat. So exactly what I did not think was going to be happening. You know, so I think there's always accidents in training, and we were in one of them.
That's what you had for lunch instead.
Yeah. And after that, when I got out of the Army, I started working for the equivalent of the Village Voice in Philadelphia, which is called The Distant Drummer. And I don't know what was in the water at the coffee machine there, but 3 people who were always who were always at our at the Distant Drummer office were all subsequently accused of murder. The most famous one was Mumia al-Jabbar, who is, you know, still a famous prisoner today. There's a lot of evidence that he was framed up, but he was like in high school and he had a bootleg radio station that he was running. You know, if it's under 50 watts, you don't have to have a license.
Right.
He did that. The other one was Ira Einhorn, who was a big leader of the anti-war movement in Philadelphia, who murdered his girlfriend and stuffed her in a trunk, and then fled to France, where he lived, what was lionized as an anti-war person. And he always claimed the CIA had framed him because of his anti-war activities. And finally, after like 25, 30 years, after Pennsylvania promised that they would not give him the death penalty, France extradited him. And the third guy was the associate producer of a local TV station that I also worked on, who one day were saying, where is he? And he was the guy that shot Joe Colombo in the park. And like, we're going like, well, why would the associate producer of this local talk show, how did he get roped into like being a hitman? We never could figure it out.
How do those dots connect? How do you get from there to there?
Yeah, but I knew all 3 of these guys. That was the craziest thing. So anyway, simultaneously with me working in the underground newspaper, where I had a column, so I didn't go in every day.
What did you write about?
I mostly did reviews, which were kind of snarky, you know, but I also had a lot of fun. Like I reviewed I forget what it was called, the Quaker City Rock Fest. And I smoked pot and knocked back some wild turkey with Janis Joplin backstage. So that was a memorable experience. Anyway,
I bet.
I got this nominal fee for this column I wrote every week. I think it was like $75. And I'm looking for steady work. And I look in the newspaper and I see an ad and it says, writers, directors, producers now hiring for a TV station. Now, normally you would never see that in a newspaper unless it was what do you call talenteers. You know, it's con artists. But what it was, as a PBS station was opening up in Trenton, New Jersey, which is right over the bridge. And because they were taking state and federal money, they had to run these ads. So I wrote, this is great. So it's a, you know, it's a 15-minute drive. I go there and I'm looking at the address. There's no TV station. So the third time I come around the block, they're hanging a canvas sign over the bowling alley sign. They had bought a bowling alley to be the studio because that's a big round, you know, think about it, the layout. And you could still, and it was still the shape of the bowling ball and the pin. They had cut it to match. So you could still see when the light hit it, a bowling ball and a pin behind WNJT TV, New Jersey. So I go inside and the whole place is being ripped up in construction. And they left 2 alleys. They left 2 alleys because they got the contract to shoot Bowling for Dollars there. And in fact, my first directing gig was directing Bowling for Dollars at the station. That was a real show.
I remember watching Bowling for Dollars. Whoa.
You know what it's like to go out and say, listen, you guys are bowling too fast. You know, can you slow down? What do you mean? I got to what's this kid telling me here? You know, it's a 30-minute show. Yeah. All right. So anyway, I say, who do I see about getting hired there? and they say, well, the fellow's doing the hiring is there behind that plywood wall. They just set up like a fake little cubicle with
Behind
plywood.
that plywood wall.
So I walk around
Sounds
there,
classy.
and there's a guy, I guess, in his in his 60s or something, and he's scratching his stump on his desk, and he's got his wooden leg. Now, remember, I'd been a medic in the Army, so I was not thrown by seeing, for a change, a well-healed stump. Oh, excuse me. He puts his leg on. And I said, I'm here about the job for writers, and I brought a portfolio. Now, by this time, I'd accumulated dozens of appearances in print, and I had them like in a book. So he's going. So New York Times goes through it. Going, oh, Rogue, I heard of that one. So he says, well, gee, you're really a writer, but we hired all our writers already. We have a short list. I don't have any more writing opportunities. So I'm ready to say, like, I'll be a gopher. I know how to work a camera from my classes. I can operate a camera. I'll take anything. And he says, wait a minute. We got writer/producer. Is that something you could do? And I go, yeah. So he hires me for a more higher paying job, for which I was not really qualified, frankly, and it turns out, now how this happened, I later discovered that you're the state of New Jersey. You've got a grant from the federal government to open a TV station. You need someone to hire the whole staff. Who do you have on the state payroll who's qualified for that? So they think about it. And this guy's job prior to this was he was in charge of all audiovisual equipment and film rentals for the New Jersey prison system. So his previous experience was providing like the equipment and approving movies to be shown on movie night in prison. So that was how I got into that situation, and it was a great hands-on learning experience. I did learn how to be a producer, and we had one of the things we do in the station is they would rent it out for commercials. So all the kind of local commercials you see, they're the same all over the country, whether they're in a big outlet like New York or Los Angeles, or a smaller one like Trenton, New Jersey. They're all equally lame, So I used to, and one of the things I directed was Toady Fields had a cooking show, and
Toady Fields. Oh
yeah.
my God, I remember Toady Fields. I don't remember her cooking show. Wow, how was Toady Fields?
It was just on. It was just on in this local area, I guess.
Yeah. What did Toady Fields cook?
I just know there was a lot of blender activity at this point. I just remember a lot of blender, and we only had 2 cameras, so there was a mirror on the ceiling that you would shoot up into the mirror to get the down shot of the cooking. Sure. And you would notice that they would stir with the right. Toady would stir with her right hand, but when we had the downhead shot, somehow mysteriously, it was her left hand. And so this is now, I guess, the early 70s. 72 or something. I have a plaque somewhere thanking me for being there for the inaugural event of the TV station. And this is when, just as like I had been there when high school students were making films, this is when we're having the independent films like Joe, which was Susan Sarandon's first picture, and Pete Boyle. Yeah. There was a great Earl Cannon before the 2 cousins had it, before Golan Globus had Cannon. And hey, we can make a film. And I had the bright idea of let's make an independent film. So I went around and talked up some people and raised some money. I had some figures that movies can make money. And I wrote and directed a stoner film.
This is Arnold's Wrecking Company.
Right. This is before Cheech and Chong. This is before Cheech and Chong.
Yeah, you got there first. Arnold's Wrecking Company.
I got there first. Now, when we went to put this together, I'm working at this TV station, and there's like-minded people. I'm meeting local actors, and I said, hey, let's put on a show here. So I reached out to local people, and one of the people as I was putting together my crew, was the sound engineer, the field sound engineer at our TV station. And he said, Stephen, you get the best rate on renting equipment when you rent on Friday and you take it back Monday. You basically get an extra day. And my brother-in-law has just started a film rental house. He's going to compete with the other 2 big boys in Philadelphia, and I can get you the best deal. All right, great. Sign me up for that. So this guy would get the equipment every week, and we filmed on weekends for like 8 or 9 months. So just around the time I was at my 1-year anniversary at the TV station, and we're now in post-production on the movie, I come into the TV station, and the guard at the front door says, "You're supposed to go directly to the station manager's office. Don't even go to your office."
Yeah.
I go, "Why?" He says, "I don't know. You're supposed to go there." "Well, I want to go in my office for a minute." "No, you can't go to your office. Go to the station manager's office." So I go to the station manager's office, and in the station manager's office is like the station manager, the lawyer for the TV station, a uniformed guard, one of the uniformed guards we have, not the head of security. No, the head of security, the uniformed guard met me, and the sound engineer, who's like collapsed in a chair with tears running down his eyes. He says, "I had to tell him, Stephen, I had to tell him the truth." And I go, "Wait, what truth?" So it turned out there was no brother-in-law. He had invented an imaginary brother-in-law with a film rental house. And he had printed up at, I guess, I don't know, whatever was, whatever was the equivalent of like, whatever, fake receipts. And every Friday, remember, this is a public television station in New Jersey that kept normal hours. So after the station shut down at 6 p.m., he would sneak in with his key to the equipment room, and he was renting the station's equipment to me. So now they say this is embezzling from the state of New Jersey. This is a criminal act. You are fired, and you are lucky we are not pressing charges because it's too embarrassing.
And did that guy go on to run a studio in Hollywood?
Yeah, he probably had the qualifications. Yeah. So now
and that guy became Peter Gober.
Anyway, now I'm laid off. I finished the film in post-production. I took it to the Atlanta International Film Festival in 1973, where it won the Special Jury Award. I guess the whole audience was smoking pot. And I made a deal with the distributor to distribute the movie. And as my continuing luck continued on course, this distributor went bankrupt the week the movie came out. So it played in about 5 theaters and was unseen until like really last year when Shout TV put it up. So if you're a budding filmmaker and you want to be inspired, you could check this out and see how far I've come.
We were putting the blog that accompanies the podcast.
All right, you want me to keep going? I'm still strapped in the 70s. I mean,
Stephen, hey man, this is the moment that I really wanted to get to. This is your launching pad moment, because this is really what set you going.
No, but this is like what was the thing that kept, we were trying to compete with Sputnik, the Navy, all of our early satellites crash and burn. They're called Vanguard. They kept blowing up. So my launch pad was like Vanguard. It kept blowing up. So this is 2 fails in a row, the TV station. Now the movie doesn't get distributed.
Right.
So now I decided, you know what? I don't want to be 40 years old and have never tried real show business. Right. I'm going to go to Hollywood.
Right. So this is, as I said, this is
motivation.
Is the way to go. Okay.
I'm unemployed. Right. What the hell? Why not?
What do you got to lose?
Now I knew enough from reading The Writer and Writer's Digest, the 2 publications.
Oh my God, I remember that, Writer's Digest.
That you needed a script sample. That even though I had some prestigious appearances in prose, I needed a script sample. Now, remember, they didn't even have a script writing program at Penn State, so I didn't even know what the script margins were. So I took the train up to New York City there's a bookstore at Columbus Circle called Cinemabilia, which is legendary now, but it closed about 20 years ago. And they had, books from all over the world about film and film production and stuff. And I got several books on what a script looks like. So I knew at least what the margins were.
At least, sure.
And then I sat down and I wrote, I have to leave out I have to, in addition to being fired, what do we say? The inciting moment, the obligatory scene, the scene that really made me decide I got to go to Hollywood it was my birthday. I was very depressed. I'm out of work. I'm on unemployment. I'm getting food stamps. My wife is driving like 20 miles from where we live, so no one sees her using food stamps. And I said, listen, someday I will pay more money I will pay back in taxes far more than I'm taking in food stamps for when it turned out, the food stamps were about 6 or 7 weeks is all it was before things changed. So I flipped the television on, and there's a movie on television. This is when they had the movies of the week. They made all these, basically maybe even C budget movies. And there was a movie, I remember this day, it was called something like Skyway of Death. And it was trying to be a disaster movie, but it was in the cable car in Palm Springs. This is, in other words, rather than, I mean, they couldn't compete with the Poseidon Adventure, or Airport, by having that many people like dead. But
Yeah,
this is,
is there a moment in there like where Eagles Dare, where you got to leap from one?
No. But they had like the Motley Crue. I remember there's a nun who's thinking of leaving. There's a nun and a priest who are thinking of leaving their calling because they're in love. There's a bank robber who's escaped with the money in his briefcase. Why he would get on the cable car? They had a Motley Crue. There's a pregnant woman. It was, sort of every cliche like on the cable car. And I'm watching this show,
like
and now after
stupid Poseidon Adventure.
Yeah, and after a year at like the local public broadcasting station, I'm noticing that like the reverses don't match, and like some shots the cable car is swinging. And I said, listen, I could write something better than this.
Sure.
So now I know the format, and I sat down and I decided on the two genres that kept me in high school an extra year, which is I always had like a Raymond Chandler or Isaac Asimov behind my algebra book. So I wrote a Hitchcockian thriller, at least in my own mind, a crime thriller, and a body horror science fiction movie.
What were they called?
Well, the Hitchcockian script was called Triple Exposure, and the hero was a fashion photographer. This is probably, when did Blow Up come out? I don't know. I don't know if
God.
I don't know if I'd seen Blow Up or not, but he was a fashion photographer, and as he was taking a fashion shoot in the real world, he accidentally photographed something, and it was like, I think it was like a kind of like a conspiracy with oil pressing, and it was like oil companies and things like that. And the science fiction script was called Death Probe, which was about a meteor lands, and then people are found butchered and all cut up in pieces. And is there an alien on the loose? And we see a point of view, like an alien point of view, almost like the Terminator point of view. And it turned out that it was an American space probe that was designed to go to Venus, right, to look for life forms. It had gone awry and come back to Earth and was still mindlessly carrying out its instructions to capture life forms and dissect them and report back. At the end of the story, I had a very dark ending. I had a very dark ending that when they finally get the authorities to come in, the authorities come in and cover it up because it was like an American space probe. So these are my two writing samples.
Now let me stop you right there.
Yeah.
All right. So this is your first time working in the screenwriting format.
Yes.
How did it feel?
I was thoroughly enjoying it. I had like studied film. I've got this is just these are all film books here.
Yeah.
And there's more here. And
writing for this format is a very particular thing. And a lot of people try it, but not very many people are actually that good at it.
Some of these books here, I'm trying to think of publication date. Okay, this is copyright 1968. All right. So I was reading all these books, at that time, and kind of absorbing it. And like there was one little
did anything help you? Did anything
absolutely. I was pretty knowledgeable. I mean, the only thing I didn't know was the script format, because anytime you buy, at that time, most of the books you buy that have screenplays, they put them in they really weren't in the proper format. In fact, the thing that really made it for me, I could actually pin this down right here if I could find it. Let me see here. I keep disappearing.
No worries.
But yeah, film scripts. Yeah, I think these were the first ones that. Yeah, these were the first books that showed it in proper screenplay format, I think.
Right.
This is 1971. And so this is so now I know what the proper format is for the first time.
And back in those days, to write in screenplay format, on a typewriter.
Yes.
So it's not even good. Gil and I, the first scripts we ever wrote together were on style sheets. You remember style sheets?
They actually just came out, and they had just come out, and I bought them. They had copies built in.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
They
yeah.
had
So,
like,
you know,
they
yeah,
had
yeah.
like the yellow and blue,
Yeah, yeah.
not carbon paper. They had, I actually bought those. They were expensive too, those things.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And the whiteout didn't work on those either.
No,
You
no,
had to like put it.
no,
All
man.
right.
Anyway, carry on, carry
Anyway,
on.
I basically spent 2 months. I wrote each script like in a month.
Hmm.
And I said, okay, I'm going out to California. Now I had family out here. My dad's older brother lived out here, and I visited them in high school, and I knew I could crash on their sofa. So I said to my, listen, I'm going to give myself 3 months. That seems a reasonable amount of time to make it in Hollywood or not.
3
Bye,
months.
honey. So I come out
And it
and
never rains in Southern
yeah,
California.
yeah. So I arrive on a Saturday, and Sunday I look in the newspaper. I call up one person I know on Saturday who was a producer I met at the film festival, took a liking to me, and said, if you're ever in California, you know, I produce Charlie's Angels. I'm sure I can find something for you. Very talented. So I call him up. He said, sure, come out and see me. But he had just gotten divorced and the show was canceled, and he was living in a motel because he hadn't found a place to live yet. He says, listen, I can't hire you right now, but let me recommend you to my agent. He calls him right in front of me. Yes, he's a very talented young man. He's made films. He's been published, New York Times. Fine. You can drop your scripts off Monday morning. This is great, a great start. Who
is this angel?
This guy, Barney Rosenzweig, a very well-known producer. I
Oh,
think
sure,
retired now.
yeah, yeah.
But he
Oh,
did Daniel
wow,
Boone
okay.
and Charlie's
Sure.
Angels, real guy.
Yeah, sure.
So
Oh.
Sunday, I look in the newspaper. So you know what? Maybe I won't be able to find a job at the studios right away. Maybe I should look for a real job. So I look in the Sunday paper, and I see an ad for telemarketers. Well, I can do that. I was on the student, the FM radio at college. I can drop into my radio voice anytime, you know. And the other ad was proofreaders wanted for Peterson Publishing, I think, which they do the how to fix your car books, you know. It's the technical publisher.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, oh, I know all the proofreading symbols. I was in the high school newspaper, college humor magazine. So I make those appointments. So I got Mondays sorted. And wait a minute, one more ad. Contestants wanted for a game show. Are you good at crossword puzzles? Well, I'll check that one too. So Monday is now sorted. So Monday, first thing I do, I drive to the agency's office and I drop off my 2 scripts. These are for Robbie Wald was the name of the agent, and he's the son of a producer, Jeff Wald, I think. Or maybe I've got it back. Maybe Jeff Wald was the father. Anyway, but a real guy in an agency. Then I go to the telemarketing interview. And the telemarketing guy says, you saw our ad. He says, you know, you sound like you're from the East Coast. What brings you to Los Angeles? Oh, daddy, Hollywood. Said, oh, okay. Well, anyway, here, read the script. It goes, your home is the most valuable asset you have. It's the future for your family. An aluminum siding protects your home against all conditions. Well, that's when he says, oh, very good. You're great. You sound like you're from the East Coast. Yeah. Why are you at Hollywood? All right. Okay. Well, if you're not working at Warner Brothers, you can start here next Monday. Ha, ha, ha. Now I go to the proofreading interview. The guy says, I'm here for the proofreading interview. He says, all right, fine. Here's some galleys. Proofread these, and I'll come back and check on you. He gives me the thing to proofread. So I mark it up with all the little squiggles, transpose, new paragraphs, misspelling, right? So I finish and I look, where is this guy? Finally, I find him in the break room flirting with a couple of secretaries. And I say, yeah, I'm done. He says, no, you can't be done. I said, I'm done. He says, look, maybe you want to go back and look at it again. I said, no, I know this. He reads it, goes, son of a bitch, I've been here 10 years. Nobody ever got a perfect score. Hey, you sound like you're from the East Coast. What brings you to Los Angeles? I say, well, yeah, I want to show. All right, okay, well, if you're not working at Paramount Pictures, you can start here next Monday. Now I go to the audition for the crossword puzzle show, which is now the Scientology studio. They bought it since then.
Oh, God.
This is before it was Scientology.
Yeah.
So there's like 150 people there. So the first thing they do is they give everybody a crossword puzzle to do, which is kind of a middle school crossword puzzle. It's really, this is not the New York Times. This is not even the New York Times mini crossword. It's like really simplistic. But nonetheless, they lose about half the crowd. So now the 75 people that are left,
what kind of puzzles were those people doing?
I don't know.
Who thought I can come here and do this?
So they say, get up in front of the room and say a few words about yourself. So after the second or third young woman says,
sure,
well, I won a beauty contest in Omaha, and I was Miss Grain. And so finally go, after 3 or 4 of these, they go, how many people here are here in Los Angeles to like be actors, actresses, singers, and like a huge chunk of the room raises their hands. So the guy, the producer running this says, okay, this show is viewed all over America. It's kind of annoying if everybody's in show business. So if you get on the show, just describe your last real job. So actually, when I was, my last real job had been doing, I was on call as a substitute teacher, when I right after I was laid off, and I'd worked, I don't know, maybe 10 days, but that was a real job, so I said my last job, I was a, English teacher at John F. Kennedy Junior High School, Go Falcons. All right, so fine. All right, okay. Now the people that were presentable, this is because they tape these game shows in front of a live audience, so that's why they wanted you to like get up in front of the room to eliminate somebody who would freeze on the day. That's why they had us get up and address the whole room. So now the group that started out over 100 people, we're down to about 30. And they, okay, what we're going to do now, this is Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday, we're going to drill you. You'll play against each other, and we will pick 10 people that will tape on Thursday, tape the show. It'll be a week's worth of shows. So I'm quickly like, acing this all. There's another young woman and we are killing everybody in the dry runs. Her name was Victoria Stevens, and we're like shamelessly like talking behind her hand, you leave this moron, stuff like that. So, we know we're good to go. I get back to my aunt's house on Wednesday, and she says, a package came for you. And I look it up, and it's from the agency. And I open it up, and my scripts have been gone for 48 hours, right? The messenger has returned them to me. They look like they've been gone for months. The back page is missing from one of them. It always tears off the brads.
Mm-hmm.
The name of the script has been written on the side as if it was on a shelf for 10 seconds. There's a coffee ring on one of them. And there's a buff slip that says, sorry, too busy to read these now. Dictated but not read, from the desk of Robbie Wald. So I call up my producer friend. He says, I can't believe that's such a long, I'm going to tear him a new SO. It's okay. It's okay. So my aunt sees my disappointment, and she says, one of my best friends is Merv Griffin's secretary. Merv Griffin, for your younger listeners, was a producer, a songwriter, an entertainer, and he had a talk show. And he also
created Jeopardy.
Yes, Jeopardy, Wheel of Fortune.
Yeah. He
says maybe they're hiring there. Why don't you, I can call her right now. You can go over there and see her right now. Great. So it's a CBS, studio in Hollywood. My aunt lives in Hollywood, in I guess Mount Olympus, if you know where that is out here.
Yep.
So it's like a 5-minute drive. And I go in there, and I'm very excited as I'm going in to see her at her office, at Merv Griffin's office. I walk past the Hollywood Squares, and I see them, all of the Hollywood Squares. They're there, celebrity sighting. So I go to see her. She says, I spoke too soon when I spoke to your aunt. I asked, I figured there had to be something, but it turns out they just hired all the writers for the game shows, and there's no openings on the talk show. So I'm sorry you came over here for nothing. And I go, well, that's all right. I saw like Cliff Arquette, out there in the square.
Charlie Weaver.
Yeah, Charlie. So it just, no, wait a second. There was a young lawyer who worked for Merv, and he became an agent. I think he just left the law firm because we got a letter. He handled the day-to-day stuff for Merv. I have it here somewhere. Yeah, he's at this agency. Let me give him a call. So she calls him right there and says, yes, he's written for the New York Times. He's got several screenplay samples. He won a prize at the Atlanta International Film Festival. He says, come right over. So I go right over, because I brought like clean copies of the script, thinking I was going to give them to Vera. I go over there, and this is Jim Burkus, who later on runs UTA now, but here he was
Sure. Wow.
And this is literally his first day on the job.
Wow.
He's got a carton of like Scotch tape dispensers, and he's actually loading stuff up in a desk in a cubicle. He doesn't have an office.
Yeah.
So he says, he looks at the scripts. He sees right away they're like the right length. You know what I mean? It's not 250 pages. He said, I worked at a producer in local television. I'm telling him, all right, great. He says, will you do television? I go, what do you mean? He says, well, some people only do the theater, only do film. No, I'll take anything. He says, all right, great. I'll read the stuff and get back to you. I said, all right, that's okay. That's fine. That's good Wednesday. All right, Thursday, we go in the morning and they say, you made the cut. You are one of the 10 people we're going to record for the show here. And unfortunately, they put me opposite Victoria Stevens, you know, which was like, you know, it was like a gladiator movie when like Kirk Douglas has to go up against Woody Strode, but we were best friends, you know. Anyway.
Only one of you walked away.
Yeah. I annihilate poor Victoria. Now I must take some credit because this is one of those shows we have celebrity co-hosts.
Yeah. It
was a panel of 3. So my co-hosts were Robert Q. Lewis, my team.
Yeah, sure.
Robert Q. Lewis and Betty White.
Oh, how could you lose? You couldn't lose.
I have a recording of this, actually.
Wow.
I can give you a link to it. So the other team, Victoria Stevens, was Leslie Nielsen and Abby Lane. I remember this to this day. Now remember, they told us,
I'm
like,
having flashbacks.
they said, remember, don't talk about show business, be like a real person, right?
Yeah.
So what you see on the show is once I get the bit in my mouth and I'm starting to win, like I completely forget I'm supposed to act like a civilian. And so Robert Q. Lewis is saying, you know, I think, Robert, please, Betty and I have this. You know, like I take over the panel. I win a car, a color television, and a stereo. Remember, I came on Saturday. So it's Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I've been in town 5 days. Now I have a car. Okay. So
how long does it take from, okay, you win the car, but do they actually give you the car right then?
No, it took a week for me to get the car.
Huh, okay. You ain't driving that car off the set into your driveway.
No, it doesn't work like that. It was a Chevrolet Chevette. It was not much of a car. It was like right behind the Ford.
I had a Chevette.
Okay,
it was a car, but it was a car.
It was a car. All right. So anyway, after the taping of the shows, all the 10 people who had been on the show, we all go out to celebrate because, you know, everybody won something, consolation prize, something. Yeah. So we went out to like a restaurant and we're drinking and it's like around 1:30 in the morning when I roll back to my aunt and uncle's house, and my aunt is up in the bathroom waiting up for me like I'm in high school. And I go, what's up? He says, this guy called and said you should call him back no matter what time, no matter how late. So I call him up. And it's Jim Burkus. And he says, listen, I read your stuff. I absolutely think you can do this. I have another client who wants to meet you. And I go, and he'll meet you tomorrow. And I say, that's great. I would love to get advice on screenwriting from a professional screenwriter. And he says, no, this is not about mentoring. This agency represents writers, directors, producers, actors. He is a producer of the $6 Million Man show. And they are having a very hard time finding people who can write that show because it's a strange combination of a science fiction show and a police procedural. And they find when writers come in who are, I'm going to name some things that your audience, younger audience won't know. When they come from a crime show, like, who knows if your audience has ever heard of this, like Hawaii Five-0.
Oh, sure, yeah. It was rebooted on CBS, so yeah, that's
yeah. All right, so anyway,
the original Hawaii Five-0.
Yeah, the original. And they come in, and they say, okay, the bad guys are escaping in a helicopter, and the $6 Million Man flies up and he can't fly. What do you mean he can't fly? He can't fly. This cockamamie show, why can't he fly? They don't understand. There's like a fence around the skills.
Yes.
Whereas the people who come from another show of the era that probably unknown to your younger viewers, Star Trek. The Star Trek writers come in and they don't know. Yeah, they don't understand the police procedural thing. So they'll say, okay, he uses bionic eye to look through the window of the nightclub owner, and he sees him paying off the district attorney. And then he crashes. I know he can't fly. He crashes through the window. No. It's a secret that he has bionic powers. He can't say I use my bionic eye. He has to work undercover as a bodyguard for the gangster and, you know, fall in love with his daughter, whatever, and then get the goods. But you, with your science fiction script, and your crime script show you know both halves of the equation. So tomorrow morning, you should have already at your house an envelope that was sent over of a new show they're doing. It's the pilot script, which is called The Gemini Man, which is like the Invisible Man. And you have a meeting tomorrow at Universal Studios with Alan Balter, my client, and Harv Bennett, the executive producer of the shows, and Leslie Stevens. Leslie Stevens had done Outer Limits. Alan Balter had come off of one of the police shows, and Harv Bennett is now well known from the feature films, Star Trek feature films. So I go to the meeting. It's almost like America's Got Talent. They're like at a long table, and I had read the script of the Gemini Man. It seemed very familiar because what had happened, the same people had done for a different network, The Invisible Man, the previous season with David Maclachlan as the Invisible Man, and they were making him a spy, but they kept the original gimmick that he had turned invisible and it had gone wrong. So the show got canceled after about 7 episodes on that network because every time he had a mask like Mission Impossible to look human, and then when he would turn invisible, he would discard the mask and his clothes, and then he would have to steal clothes from a washing line. And then maybe a balaclava, like a ski mask, to like go. And so they wrote themselves in the corner with the invisible and the clothes and the naked. This new version where they end up using some of the same scripts when we got on the air. The new version was he was exposed to radiation. He was a deep sea diver, and he was a rebel because he wore jeans and he rode a motorcycle. He was a deep sea diver, and he stopped the nuclear submarine from exploding, but the radiation turned him invisible. But somehow the radiation was destroying his cells, and he turned invisible, and then his cells would disintegrate. But they managed to save his life. They had some kind of watch with like some kind of anti-radioactive hand-wavium, unobtainium, and this watch kept him visible, and he could turn the watch off for 10 minutes a day and be invisible for 10 minutes a day. But if he was ever invisible for more than 10 minutes a day, he would die. So that was this new convoluted way. So they say, tell us some of your ideas. So I say, well, they always say steal from the best. Alfred Hitchcock. No, I did the other way around. I said, okay, all right. This time, I watched the shows. They're always commies. The bad guys are always communists. So I say, okay, we always steal from the best. We all know Hitchcock. Let's do Lady on a Train. Only the lady on the train should be a hot young girl, and it's the Olympic swim team. And for some reason, the train with the Olympic swim team is the one they're transporting a nuclear weapon on. I forget how. Or maybe maybe one of the girls on the swim team is the daughter of the nuclear scientist they want to blackmail. I forget whatever it was. I ended up writing the script.
Whatever the MacGuffin was.
Yeah, but I forget what it was. I actually wrote the script for them, but at this time it wasn't conceived. But all I knew was like Invisible Man, girls' locker room. You can't miss with that. The audience for these shows. So the commies realize they're onto him. He's fighting them. This is when he's visible. Somebody sneaks up behind him, hits him with a wrench. He falls down on the railroad tracks, and his wrist hits the track. The button clicks. He turns invisible, and then the conductor says, "All aboard!" and the train starts moving. Go to commercial. So now they all just like on America's Got Talent. They all start mumbling to each other. So I said, good or bad. All right, what else you got? Okay, continuing steal from the best. Alfred Hitchcock, Notorious, right? There's a den of Nazi spies. Claude Rains is really kind of a mama's boy. His mother's really the ringleader. We do the same thing, only it's commies, of course. And our guy turns invisible. He slips into the meeting of the commies. They're doing their plan of evil communist stuff. And all of a sudden, the mother turns to him and says, "Can I get you a beverage?" Because she's blind and she thinks he's one of the other commies in the room. At this point, Harv Bennett jumps up, comes around the table, grabs me and kisses me on the cheek and says, "Finally, somebody who gets it. It's about getting these guys into a pickle. It's not about the superpowers. It's about the problem of the superpower.
That the superpower can solve.
And you got to reverse engineers. And this kid, I don't know how he knows it. This is great. Great. Okay, Steve. Now, this is great. it's already late. Just see Agnes about parking. And I say,
Just the Agnes about bargaining.
so I say, I said, I've got the ticket right here. But I don't even need to get validated because my cousin's going to pick me up when I call her. She lives. It says, no, not to be validated for parking, for your assigned parking space.
Yeah.
You're starting here Monday, working for Harv Bennett's Bionic unit, and you want you to hit the ground running.
How many days were you in town when this happened?
I came on Saturday, so Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. This is my 6th day here. And so I was basically at Universal for 5 years, working my way up the food chain from story editor to executive script consultant to supervising producer and finally to executive producer when I was a showrunner on Knight Rider.
Right. Then you get to Knight Rider and the first season of Knight Rider. That's you.
Yeah.
You are the man.
I also had made the deal. I said, I'm a director, and so I was able to make a deal at that time. I want to direct a couple of episodes, but what invariably happened on all these shows, as we got towards the end of the season, I just could not pull myself out for 3 weeks to direct the show. So I never was able to take care of the opportunity to direct an episode until many years later on Tales, where we all met. Right. Anyway, after about 5 years, my contract was up, and during that little interregnum where we were renegotiating my contract, Paramount said, "Come over here. We will meet or better anything Universal gives you, and we will get you in the feature business at Paramount. There is no firewall between features and television like there is at Universal." Mm-hmm. So I went to Paramount, where I did 2 pilots for them under the worst possible circumstances, everything going wrong, writing in front of the camera, like Star going to the hospital, Powers of Matthew Star. We set our Star on fire on the pilot, and then a show called The Renegades, which was Patrick Swayze's, I think, first big role, which was like 21 Jump Street before 21 Jump Street. Right. And that was a crazy experience because, you get a reputation of working fast and under the gun. And so this is where I met Larry Gordon and Joel Silver. They said, "We want you to read the script and write a scene with these characters. That's the last scene of an episode that hasn't been shot yet." And I go, "Well, this is a strange assignment. Why?" He says, "Aaron Spelling is on fire. They'll shoot the phone book with him. And we sold this show. It's Aaron Spelling and Larry Gordon. We sold the show to ABC. They've ordered it directly to series, right? And we have our first script in, and we can't show it to them. It's a mess." And what happened is Aaron had put one of his writers working on one of his other shows to write this script in 10 days, and it didn't work out right. And one of the weirdest experiences I ever had, this is the same day, Aaron Spelling had him come into the office and apologize to everybody. It was
writer?
Real weird power thing. "I really let you down. I'm really sorry."
God, that's appalling.
Really strange circumstance. So they were afraid to send the script to the network because they might blink. So they said, "Can you write a scene like this? These characters, they just finished a case. It's the last episode, freeze frame." Now, by this time, I've been working in television five years now. I knocked this thing out in 90 minutes. It's like 4 pages. And they turn it great. Okay, take this over to casting. They have actors there now. Right? This is how crazy this was. And then Roger Spottiswoode, who was the director of this, he's going to film the scene I wrote the next day on the lot. So they went on the back lot. They found a place behind a soundstage. It looked like an alley where you can have the gang comes together from all directions, almost like a half-ass version of the opening of the remake of West Side Story, where the gang comes in from different directions, So one's coming around the soundstage, one's coming out of a car, and then they meet their contact, who I think was, I can't think of the actor's name, but he was the bad guy in RoboCop, and he was on he was the father on the 70s show.
Kurtwood Smith.
Kurtwood Smith is the superintendent. Doesn't really think we should use the young. They shoot that. So now
he did a Crypt too.
So the network says, "This is great. We love the dailies. Where's the script?" And so they made, you know what? They had a breakdown in the print shop. We're supposed to get the script. We'll send it over tomorrow. So now I'm writing the movie. So now I go, what do I do? He says, you can write anything you want, but you have to keep a Chinatown connection. Why? Because we have a Chinatown set on the lot we want to use. So just make some kind of Chinatown connection in your story. So now I'm writing this thing according to the shooting schedule, right?
Sure.
Completely out of order. Now, that was my one thing I've never had is writer's block, because when I get stuck, like, let's say I do not know how my boy and girl meet in my rom-com, not that I'm known for rom-coms, but hypothetically, but I could have their first date or their first argument, or a scene where they almost break up, even if I haven't figured out how they met. I can write out of order. I first realized this was unusual when on the Bionic Woman, I worked on all those shows, just being on Bionic Woman, Gemini Man. The Bionic Woman, Lindsay Wagner was in an automobile accident, and we had to somehow do 3 episodes shooting around her and then have her come back in and do her scene. So it was very crazy. So I had to do one of these things right away. So I send the pages in, and somebody calls me from the print shop doesn't care, but I get a call from production. Listen, we just got these pages from the print shop. It says Act 2. Where's Act 1? And I go, I haven't written it yet. And the guy says, well, we shoot these out of order. Who the fuck cares? It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So,
exactly right.
So I'm writing this thing, the Renegades pilot, out of order. And the actors are coming up to me and saying, why am I angry at this person? And I go, you'll find out tomorrow. I mean, I actually haven't figured it out yet, So anyway, this circumstances here with Roger Spottiswoode as the director and Larry Gordon as the producer of a crime script for a change, not like the science fiction shows at Universal. I mean, $6 Million Man, Knight Rider, they're all science fiction-y. They were considered kid shows. Now this is more adult material, supposedly. The Renegades, it's like there's no talking cars. So this is when Larry gives me 48 hours.
And that is part 1 of our interview with Steve de Souza. In part 2, I'm even just thinking about the stories that Steve told and it's yet to tell. It boggles my mind. In part 2 of the interview, Steve will pick it up with 48 hours, and then he'll begin to talk about Die Hard. And the making of Die Hard, there are some amazing stories to come with that. Some great Joel stories, of course. And then, of course, he'll talk about everything that came after. And it's when you look at
Beverly Hills Cop 2.
Oh my God, Beverly Hills
Commando, Judge Dredd.
Yeah,
on
yeah.
and on.
Yeah. He wrote the Flintstones. He wrote Lara Croft. He wrote Blast. Oh, the man has done so much. And again, he's an amazing storyteller. Join us for part 2. The How Not to Make a Movie podcast is executive produced by me, Alan Katz, by Gil Adler, and by Jason Stein. Our artwork was done by the amazing Jody Webster, and Jason Jody, along with Mando, are all the hosts of the fun and informative Dads from the Crypt podcast. Follow them for what my old pal the Crypt Keeper would have called terrific crypt content.